Followed the instructions on the bathroom stall. It was the greatest mistake of my life. I was in the bathroom stall of a local pub when I saw writing on the door that said, "Follow the arrows." I looked around, but I didn't see any arrows. Whatever, I didn't think about it. Then, about a month after that, I'm back in the same place. I use the restroom to wash my hands before I tear into some buffalo wings. They were out of paper towels. Not wanting to touch the restroom door with my hands, I tried to open it with my elbows. This was a clumsy process and resulted in my bumping a light switch with my elbow. The room went completely dark. Or did it? On the ceiling, I noticed a trail of glow-in-the-dark arrows painted onto the ceiling. They were very, very faded, looking like they'd been there for quite a while. They led out the door. Now I had totally forgotten about the graffiti I had read a month ago, so I didn't really think about those arrows at all. I just pulled my sleeve over my wet hand, used it to flip the switch back on and open the door. It wasn't until the end of the evening when my brain, out of nowhere, remembered the follow the arrows graffiti in the stall. I excused myself from the table, just to check that it was this stall where I saw the writing. It was. Now I had a mystery. I wanted to follow the arrows, but I couldn't. After I left the restroom, the ambient light was so bright that the arrows were invisible. I told my friends about the arrows and asked the bartender about it. He knew about the graffiti but had never seen the glow-in-the-dark arrows. After about 15 minutes of pouring drinks, he took a minute to go check it out. He didn't seem that impressed. I asked him if we could stay after closing and turn off all the lights to see where it went. He said yes. Flash forward 2 hours. The bartender and some of the waitresses are all standing around in the dark of the bar, looking at little faded arrows that make a trail from the restroom out to the front door. We step outside, but the trail is dead. The streetlights outside make the faded glow-in-the-dark arrows impossible to see. But this wouldn't stop me. 3 days later, I'm in the geology building at my college, when I notice the display of exotic minerals that the department has in a display case. Inside the case is a small, handheld black light used by rockhounds to find and observe glow-in-the-dark minerals. After the class, I ask the professor if I can borrow it. He says yes, but that if I break it I owe the department $45. Flash forward 9 hours. I drag my buddies back to the bar. We have some more drinks and awesome buffalo wings. When we're done gorging ourselves it is already dark outside. I went to the bathroom and tested my black light on some of the painted arrows. It worked like a charm. They glowed incredibly brightly, and even with the lights on they were fairly visible. I went back to the table. We pay our tab, and step onto the street. My friends stood around me, trying to look cool, while I was geeking out with my black light searching for invisible arrows on the ground. I found one. I followed the arrow, keeping my black light inches from the ground, waving it back and forth. 5 feet away I found another arrow. Then another, and another still. Now we were going somewhere. I was following these arrows down a sidewalk for about 2 blocks. My friends finally loosened up and started speculating on where these arrows were taking us. Finally I got to an arrow pointing us in a new direction. It was a driveway leading to an empty commercial lot of some kind. The lot was surrounded by cyclone fences with aluminum siding, so we couldn't see what was inside. The arrows led us around the fence to a gate. I saw a lot of glow-in-the-dark paint under my light, and it took me a few seconds and some swinging of the light to realize we were looking at a giant arrow pointing inside the fence. I guess I should introduce you to my friends now. One was Jeff, one was Dave. Jeff pushed on the gate. It was locked and it rattled terribly in the dark. Dave looked uncomfortable. He took a deep breath, and before he could suggest we go home, I cut him off. I say we hop the fence. Jeff didn't even say anything before he leapt against the gate, getting a firm handhold at the top. Ungracefully, but successfully, he pulled himself to an uncomfortable straddle on top of the gate. I followed suit, leaping at the gate. Dave followed next with surprising ease. From our perch on the gate, we could see that the fence surrounded what looked like an old parking lot. Grass and other green things sprang up from the ancient, crumbled asphalt. Immediately below us, on the other side of the fence, was nothing but inky blackness from the shadow cast by the gate from a nearby street lamp. To my surprise, Dave was the first one to slide down into the dark. He slid down the fence as low as possible before letting go and taking the final plunge. "It's okay," he said, "I can see a little. It's just asphalt." Jeff and I dropped down from the fence. I pulled out my light and quickly found an arrow. We followed a new trail slowly, and it quickly became clear that we were being led to a small shack in the middle of the parking lot. "I know what this is," said Dave. "I think this all used to be a drive-in movie theater. I think that is the concession stand." Jeff and I agreed that this was a pretty good theory. We walked to the building, and as we got closer, saw that it was boarded up. But the shape of it, and its enormous plyboard-covered windows made us think that Dave was probably right. I scanned the ground with my black light for more arrows and found none. Dave shrugged. "So, what? The arrows used to lure people to buy popcorn?" "Looks like," Jeff said. We walked around the building until we came to a door in the back. It was secured by an old combination padlock. My black light hung from a tie on my wrist. I thought I had shut it off now that our mystery was solved. But out of the corner of my eye I caught a glimpse of glowing paint. I aimed my light at it. "Whoa," said Dave. There on the door, in sharp, new glowing paint was scrawled 1356. Holding the black light close, we quickly rotated the wheels on the lock. Jeff pulled it open with a satisfying click. Pulling the padlock aside, we pushed on the old door. It creaked ominously, and got stuck when it was about a third of the way open. Jeff kicked his foot around the inside and moved an obstruction with thud. The door opened halfway now, and Jeff peeked inside. I can't see anything, he said. I peeked inside the door, shining my black light. It was useless. I cursed myself for not bringing a real flashlight. A black light and a cell phone were not enough to explore in there. It's useless, I said, as I pulled back from the door. Dave took his turn peering in. Just as I was about to suggest we head back to return another day, I heard a click, and a dim light appeared within the building. Holy crap, said Dave. I flipped the light switch, but I never thought in a million years that it would work. Jeff said, yeah, this place looks like it's been out of use for like 30 years, at least. Look at this parking lot. There are trees in it. Someone's still paying the bills, I said. In hindsight, this should have tipped us off that something wasn't right. But in the moment, we headed into the building. We walked in, and saw a surprisingly clean concession stand interior. There was thin coating of that strange sort of dust that accumulates in the absence of people. The sort of dust you would expect to find in an ancient tomb. The shelves were empty, and a cabinet stood on the far side of the room, doors closed. Dave walked to it and opened it cautiously. Initially, Dave and I went to look at all these old snacks on the shelves. Before I could examine further, Jeff said, dudes, check this out. He was standing over a hatch in the floor. He'd pulled it up and was peering into the dark. Maybe there's another light down there? He bounded down a set of steps into the cellar. Dave and I followed close behind, trying to find a switch along the way. If I hadn't been in such a hurry to keep up with Jeff, I might have noticed that the black light I had dropped was illuminating some more glowing paint. And if I had noticed that, I might also have noticed that the paint made an arrow was pointing directly towards this basement hatch. And if I had noticed that, it might have given me pause. But I did not notice these things. I was halfway to the bottom of the stairs when I heard a click. My eyes were immediately drawn to a glow in the corner of the basement. Jeff said, found it. We walked toward the light, bumping into empty shelves and some strange debris along the way. Canvas bags, like sacks of potatoes. They were covered in dust. I was more concerned with the shelf under the light. It held what I recognized as old film canisters. Truly these were treasure. We hurried over, reading the titles. Lots of things with monsters, Dracula Returns, Night of the Wolf People, great stuff. But I didn't recognize any of the titles. We all jumped when we heard it. There was whirring sound. Very loud, coming from near the stairs. It sounded somehow familiar, like a garbage disposal or some electric power tool. We saw the shadows changing from the light in the hatchway. We had nearly knocked over the shelf with the film reels. I had involuntarily thrown my hands over my ears. Dave and Jeff had comical, frightened expressions on their faces. I probably looked the same. At last the sound stopped. We stood still for a moment, our hearts beating hard in our chests. Then, as if awakening from a trance, we all ran over to the hatch to investigate. My mind could not comprehend what it saw. Was the ceiling upstairs covered in black stripes? No. My eyes finally understood. The hatch we had just come down moments ago was now blocked by iron bars. We were trapped, but by who?